Thank you all so much for joining us here this afternoon for this presentation. My name is Cal Hedigan. I'm the CEO of Community Access, and my role here is a very simple one. I'm just introducing our staff and speaking for a second about the presentation. There have been a few moving parts in our panelists because life happens and work happens, and not everyone who was planning and hoping to be here has been able to make it. But we do have 3 people. I was just checking that someone else didn't turn up. Justin Barron, our Director of Community Engagement Services, Murial King, our Director of Training, and Lauren Stander, who is our an Assistant Program Director at one of our supportive housing facilities, Governor Court. So I want to thank them all for agreeing to come and share this information with you. One of the things that I've said as we were thinking about this presentation was when I started working in New York City in the mental health system in 1990, all we were told about what were called at the time auditory hallucinations was ask someone, are they command hallucinations? Find out if they are instructing someone to hurt themselves or others. That was the beginning and the end, right, of information about voice hearing. And so much has changed in the intervening time. And the panel here today is going to talk about a training that we've been using at Community Access for, I'm not sure how long, but I'm going to say at least 15 years, and a little bit about the Hearing Voices movement, and share their experiences as participants in the training as well, and its impact on their work. And now I'm going to turn it over to Murial.
Thank you, Cal, for your warm welcome. I hope you all don't mind my using notes here and there. When I don't use notes, I tend to go off on tangents, and I'm also very passionate about this topic, so I don't want to be all over the place. But yes, thank you again, Cal. And I'd also like to introduce Justin Barron, who's the co-investigator of this case study. Yeah, sure. I'd like to introduce Justin Barron, who's the co-investigator of this case study that we're presenting today. And I'd like to, Cal already introduced Lauren Stander. Lauren, I'm so glad that you can make it today, and we look forward to hearing about your experiences and your expertise. So this is my first Shoney conference, and I am super excited. I'd like to acknowledge the Shoney staff, especially Joelle Ballum-Schwan, who helped to put together the conference and who was so helpful. So in this talk, we're going to present a case study that describes how over the past, as Cal says, say 15 years, Community Access's direct service workers participated in something called core training. It's an intensive boarding process. Is this better?
There you go.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we're presenting a case study that shows how over the past 10 to 15 years, Community Access direct service workers participated in something called core training. And we'll talk more about core training later. But it's an intensive onboarding process. And as part of core training, they went through a hearing distressing voices module, where they were actually able to participate in the simulation to see what it's like to hear distressing voices. And that experience really impacted them in a very deep way, so they'll talk about that. But before I go on, I'd like to give some acknowledgments to Cal Hedigan for her leadership over the years through hard times like the pandemic and through happy moments like this. I'd like to acknowledge Nikki Williams, who's the Chief People Officer. She was going to be here today, but wasn't able to be here. But she's my boss and just an amazing person to work with. I'd like to acknowledge Karen Rosenthal, who's a consultant at SHONI. And she also couldn't be here today, but she preceded me in my role as Director of Training and laid the groundwork for the work that the training department does. Also for Dasal Caracas, who used to be a senior practice and implementation specialist in the training department and also developed a lot of the training materials. I'd like to acknowledge Chief Program Officer Michelle DeRoche, who couldn't be here today, for her leadership over the programs. I'd like to acknowledge Training and Implementation Specialist Willow Smith, who also couldn't be here today. But she's really instrumental in putting together the nuts and bolts of the training that we do. And I'd like to acknowledge Justin Barron. I've had the privilege of working directly for Justin and working with Justin. He's one of the most compassionate and one of the most detail-oriented people that I know. And I'd like to acknowledge Lauren Stander. I'm actually just getting to know Lauren a bit, but I know that she's really committed to the work that she does. So thank you all. So what I'll do next is briefly go over the agenda, which you'll see on the next slide.
There we go.
Great, thank you. So what we'll do today is, first of all, we'll give a brief overview of community access and its services, and we'll describe the transformational work of the Hearing Voices movement that some of you may be aware of. But we'll talk about the movement and some of its pioneers. And we'll hear through, again, from panelists who went through the Hearing Voices simulation. We'll hear about their experiences and how that experience impacted their work. We're also going to leave time for a Q&A, so please save your questions for the end. And I also have these sheets with a QR code that you can scan before you leave. And you can, by scanning that, you can give an evaluation of the training today, of its effectiveness. So I'm looking forward to talking more with you. And we're going to turn this over to Justin. He's going to talk about community access values and services.
Hello. So I'm Justin. Thanks for the very kind and flattering words, Murial. So just briefly, I wanted to touch on what community access is, who we are, just a little bit of context about where this training takes place. So this training takes place, in an organization that is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Yay! And I've been with the organization for 11 of those 50 years, and I'm really proud to be part of an organization doing such wonderful and meaningful and impactful work. So this is just a list of services and programs that Community Access operates. On top of the list is supportive and affordable housing. Community Access operates about 1,400 units of supported housing across the city in different boroughs. Mostly permanent housing, some transitional, but we operate from a housing first principle and model. We also run the Howie the Harp Peer Advocacy Center. How many people have heard of Howie the Harp before? A handful, okay. Howie the Harp is a program that I'm involved with directly and that I am very proud of and fond of. They train people to become peer specialists, people who have lived experience with mental health concerns, can undergo this training and emerge as specialists who can work in the field as peers. So that's an intensive program that we run. And then we have mobile crisis teams, clinical supports through a PROS model. and a variety of other things related to related to supported employment and supported education, and a lovely pet access program that helps people connect to owning and supporting pets as part of their lives. So Community Access is a well-rounded bunch of services. All those services are driven by a set of core values: harm reduction, healing and recovery-focused services, human rights, peer expertise, racial equity, and self-determination. These principles are all interrelated and are really at the foundation of all of our trainings. And so we're always keeping them at the forefront of our mind, and we always want to think about our principles and values as we start to think about how we're going to approach our work and what kind of aspects of the work need to be focused on in training. So this Hearing Voices simulation, I think, is especially connected to the values of self-determination and peer expertise. We'll hear a bit more about how those values come about through the course of the training, but we always want to keep these values in mind as we proceed. Going back to Murial. Right? Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Justin. Before we go on, I wasn't going to share this, but one of the reasons why this topic is so important to me is because I and my family members have a history of having unusual experiences, things like different phenomena, different spiritual experiences. But what I'll share with you all is, how many of you had an imaginary friend as a child? Okay, a lot of you. So as a child, I had imaginary friends, and their names were BB and Jerry. And I had a really rich interaction with my imaginary friends, but my parents got really tired of it. And so one day they called me into the room and said they needed to talk with me. And I sat down, and they told me that BB and Jerry had moved to Florida. But anyway, so we'll go on to talk about core training a bit. Next slide, please. Okay.
Where did it go? Oh, it's right here.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, cool. Thank you. Okay. All right. So core training is a very intensive onboarding process that we do for direct service workers who work at Community Access. It's a multi-week training process. It can take up to 2 months and 2 days per week. It started off in the early 2000s as recovery-oriented practice, and then it evolved over time. For instance, in 2012, core training had 12 modules. And during our last iteration that took place in the winter and spring, core had 15 modules. So we have to sort of balance. What we do is we add modules, change modules, et cetera, based on trends, research, and really the needs of program participants. For instance, our last iteration of training, we had a health and wellness session because we recognized the intersection of physical health, behavioral health, and substance use. So we were able to add that session. We also added pieces on technical things like writing effective progress notes, writing effective service plans. And then we have foundational modules like person-centered care, recovery-oriented care, self-determination, harm reduction. And then we go on to some special circumstances like working with people who have unusual fears and beliefs. We have modules on let's see, let me think of some of the other ones. Suicide prevention is another one. So you can see it's a really intensive program. And we use guest speakers who have lived experience with these topics and also who have special expertise on these topics. And I wanted to read a quote from my predecessor in the training department who talked about core training. We really try to engage staff to meet them where they're at in the beginning. Some of them not so confident or certain of their abilities or even perhaps of their commitment to the philosophy and practice module. We seek to have them by the end become passionate advocates of the community access way with some real skills which wish to implement the philosophy in their day-to-day work. And I can really attest to that. I took core about 10 years ago. Just a bit about my background. I actually used to live in supportive housing, and I was one of the difficult, hard to engage tenants. So the fact that I'm speaking at this conference today is just sort of weird. But thank you. Thank you so much. I call myself a housing first baby, even though, of course, I'm not a baby anymore, but I went through the housing first program and then started, I have been on disability, but I went back to work and worked for community access, and it really gave me opportunities to grow in the organization and grow as an individual. But before I took core training, my knowledge about things like harm reduction and the fact that having a home is a right, I didn't know that stuff because going through homelessness, I actually didn't know that it was a human right to have housing, because when I became homeless and I needed a place to stay, people were like, no, and I had to go into the shelters. But I just learned so much through core training. It's been a really beautiful experience. So the Hearing Voices module is part of the it comes later in the core training series after people have gotten more foundational training. And it's a module where learners listen to an MP3 player. Justin, if you'll hand me that box. Yep. Thank you. In this box, there's an MP3 player that has recorded voices on it. After the training, if you all want to look at it, you can. We won't have you actually like play it. We're going to actually have a video of someone who's going through the process later. But just to show you what it looks like. Thank you, Justin. And while they're listening to the voices, they go through, they go out into the community and they do different tasks. And we'll talk about those tasks later. But and then they also go through mock mental health appointments. And we found that this exercise increases empathy in the trainees and enhances the therapeutic relationship between the employee and the person who hears voices. And we also find that the training leads to employees being more recognizant of the strengths and resilience of people who hear voices. These findings mirror those of 13 peer-reviewed studies that were done outside of community access by separate studies where people took the training and they had the same experience of increased empathy and increased greater therapeutic relationships. So what we'll do next is we'll talk about the history of the Hearing Voices movement to give a bit more context. And we hope that as you hear about the journey of this movement, you'll imagine community access as part of this movement, part of this trajectory. And we'd like to make you aware of this process. If you're not already, this may be something you may want to consider for your organization. Okay, next slide. Thank you. All right, so okay, so the history of the Hearing Voices movement is very fascinating. And I actually found myself digging into the material late at night to study about it because it's just really intriguing. Justin, could you hand me the first book, please?
Yeah.
Thank you. This book is called Living with Voices, 50 Stories of Recovery. It's by Professor Marius Rom, Dr. Sandra Escher, and some other people. But I'll be talking about Rom and Escher in a minute. So the Hearing Voices movement actually came out of a therapeutic alliance between a patient and a provider. And the movement is consumer-led, and it's built upon, again, therapeutic alliance with a psychiatrist and his patient. When I think about the relationship that Marius Rom had with the patient, Pasha Haag, I think about Rogerian therapy. Carl Rogers, the founder of person-centered therapy, believed that for a person to grow, they need an environment that provides them with genuineness, acceptance, and empathy, being listened to and being understood. Who in the room agrees with that? Yeah, exactly. So this is what happened. Okay, so in the 1980s, there was a Dutch woman named Pasha Haag, and at the age of 8, she started hearing voices. And at first, the voices were supportive, but, so the voices started when her scarf caught on fire and she suffered burns. So after that, she started hearing voices, and the voices started off being supportive because, as some of you may know, everyone's voices aren't harsh or distressing. They can be comforting. So hers started off that way, but over time, they began to become more and more distressing, and they began to torment her. Just a quote, "The voices would ban her from doing anything she enjoyed. They sabotaged her friendships and her romantic relationships. If she tried to ignore them, they would punish her by forcing her to do things she didn't want to do, like cut herself." At 16, Pasha Haag ran away from home, but the voices followed her into foster care. Later, she dropped out of university, struggled to hold down jobs, became suicidal, was diagnosed with schizophrenia, and spent her early adulthood in and out of hospitals. Luckily, she started seeing a psychiatrist named Marius Rom, who was who worked for the University of Maastricht in the Netherlands, hence the term Maastricht voice interview, which Justin is going to be talking about. And Rom was involved in campaigns against building psychiatric hospitals, believing that people are better cared for within the communities. How many of you believe that? Exactly. So Pasha Haag and Marius Rom developed this relationship, and together they started reading a book called The Origins of Consciousness and the Breakdown of the Bicameral Mind. It's a 1976 book by the Yale psychologist Julian Jaynes, and it argues that in ancient times, humans lacked consciousness as we know it today, and instead experienced thought as a series of auditory hallucinations, commands that they ascribe to their leaders or gods. These voices, Jaynes speculated, may have been similar to those heard by people with schizophrenia, and Hogg found it reassuring, Ron later wrote, to consider that 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, her experiences might have been normal. So when you look at, it's been speculated that people have been hearing voices for at least 10,000 years. And you look at, people like, even Carl Jung heard voices. Guitarist Carl Santana, Lady Gaga, Harriet Tubman, people in the Bible, like, Moses, heard voices. So this is nothing new. And so in 1987, well, and let me just point out something, a quote. Patsy Hogg told her doctor, Marius Ram, she told him, if you believe in a God that we can't see, why can't you believe in voices that I do hear? And it really opened up his mind. And at first, he treated her as a patient with schizophrenia, with a medical model. But he really began to have a different relationship with her and believe her, which is really beautiful. In 1987, Ram and Hogg, with the help of journalist Dr. Sandra Escher, who actually ended up marrying Dr. Ram, appeared on a TV show, after which 450 people called into a special hotline and expressed that they heard voices. Later that year, Ram held the first Congress for People Who Hear Voices. Hogg was one of the speakers, and 360 people showed up, including psychiatric patients, psychics, spiritual healers, and religious devotees who frequently heard the voice of God. From there, an international hearing voices movement started. It went to the UK, which now has a network of over 180 hearing voices groups, then to Australia and America and beyond. And Hearing Voices USA started in 2010. They offer support and training. They help link people to the Hearing Voices groups, which include online groups. And there are Hearing Voices groups throughout the city. For more information, go to www.hearingvoicesnyc.org. And again, that's www.hearingvoicesnyc.org. Next, Justin is going to describe the Maastricht voice interview, which I referred to earlier. And then we're going to briefly look at the tenets of the Hearing Voices movement.
That one. Huh, looks a little funny. Has anyone heard of or used the Maastricht interview? I hope there's no one who speaks Dutch here who can be offended by how badly I'm pronouncing the name of that town. But as Murial mentioned, the leaders of this early Hearing Voices movement were from and working in Maastricht, and they developed this interview tool in the late 80s and early 90s, particularly Sandra Escher, Patsy Hogg, and Marius Ram, who Muriel was mentioning. And at the beginning, when our CEO Cal was introducing this panel, she mentioned that when she started in the field, the only thing you ever heard, and when you were being taught how to work with people who hear voices, is to find out right away, like, are they command voices? Are they going to tell somebody to do something dangerous, to harm themselves, to harm someone else, and to figure out how to get them to stop. And so through this process, in the development of the movement, there was a shift in thinking, and that shift really represented the idea that voices have meaning to people. And so just on the right side of the slide, there's just a snapshot of the table of contents of the interview. It's a series of sections, and you can see that this is starting to explore what the experience of voices is like and what it means in a more holistic way. So this process was really developed by people who hear voices and can contribute to it in ways that meant something to their lives. So, you know, if you're going through this interview, you're asking questions about, like, where in the body do the voices arise? Like, do you hear them coming from a certain direction? Does it come up during certain moments in your life? Did it start after any particular incident? Do the voices sound like somebody that you know? And throughout the process of trying to explore the history of the voices in someone's life and the fine details of the experience, the aim is to start to figure out what meaning this has to somebody. And from there, you can start to get a sense about, like, why somebody's having this experience, and develop that holistic feeling of like how this is part of somebody's whole experience, not something separate that you need to, like, extract out and shove aside. So, you know, we don't actually use this interview in any particular program in community access, but I wanted to take a moment to talk about it because I think it represents like a sort of paradigm shift in how people work with people who have these experiences, because I think it relates also to a more peer-oriented perspective, which is definitely the main influence on how we construct and organize our services at community access. I think you're on next, right?
Yes, I
So,
am.
yeah. So, okay, next we're going to go back to Murial, who's going to just go over some of the main tenets of the Hearing Voices movement.
Thank you so much, Justin. And we're running a bit behind schedule. So the next parts I'm going to go through quickly because I like for us to have time for the panelists and for any questions that you may have. So the tenets of the Hearing Voices movement are on,
Yeah, just here.
thank you. They're on the slide. I am not going to read them. You can read them to yourself. But you'll see that the tenets, they actually mirror community access's values and maybe the values of your organizations too. It puts the program participant at the center of the services. It values peer support, it fosters community integration, and it destigmatizes natural human experience. Now that we have this background, I'll discuss the simulation in detail. All right, before I introduce yes, sorry, I'm not a tech person. Before I introduce the simulation, I wanted to read a quote that I thought was very succinct. Non-voice hearers can't imagine what it is like to hear voices. They find it strange and frightening. Voices create anxiety in non-voice hearers too, and in professionals who haven't had these kinds of experiences. This explains a great deal of the animosity voice hearers encounter in society and in traditional psychiatric practice. What makes it even more difficult is that the experience is often kept private from others through fear, shame, and stigma. So the Hearing Voices simulation provides an antidote to stigma and disconnection by putting the service provider in the program participant's shoes. Thank you. All right, so let me explain the simulation. It was developed by Pat Deegan. The slide says 1996, but actually she started working on it in 1994. How many of you are familiar with Pat Deegan? Excellent. So Pat Deegan is a person who was diagnosed with schizophrenia. I believe it's a teenager, and she was told, "Oh, you're always going to be a patient. It's going to be a chronic condition. You'll have to take meds." She also heard voices, but she went on to become a psychologist and a disability rights activist. And she built this empathy building workshop. The history of this is that she got the idea from people who use wheelchairs. They had developed a simulation showing how it can be hard to access different places. And so she and her friends did a recording, I believe like on a kitchen table. We actually reached out to Dr. Deegan, and she gave us these details. So I was super excited. And so they started off doing a recording, and that consisted of samples of voices that she and her friends heard, like approximations of those voices. And then they took it to a place to be recorded. And originally, you would listen to the voices like on a Walkman. I believe back in the day when I did the training, we did it on a Walkman, but they changed it to MP3 players. And this simulation has been used by, you name it, occupational therapy students, people who work in the judicial field, psychiatrists, nursing students, first responders. It's been translated into Mandarin, and it's now being researched in China, and it's also being translated into German. So I'm going to go into the elements of the workshop. You can hold the workshops in colleges, and social service organizations, and a variety of settings. You tailor the experience to your setting. So first of all, participants sign a consent form. There's also a trigger warning, and we say that people who hear voices, we recommend that they not participate in this simulation. Next, there is the audio setup. Participants receive a preloaded MP3 player, and the player contains voices, different types, like a male voice, female voice, loud voice, whispering. We're going to watch a video in a minute that will have that. And participants listen to an intro by Deegan. Then they are asked to put the volume at mid-range and not adjust the volume during the simulation. And then they go on a public errand in the community. They get a slip of paper with a task written on it, and they'll do these tasks while listening to the audio. Some examples are, we did a training in the Bronx. Your task is to go to Walgreens between Jerome and Walton and ask them about their rewards program. First, find out how many points you earn for every dollar you spend, and if you get points for your prescriptions too. Ask if the program also applies to doing restores as well. So you're doing this while you're listening to a recording. You're doing stuff in the community, and I've done it before. It was super awkward and distressing. Here's another example. Your task is to go to Blink Fitness, located at the intersection of Inwood and East 172nd. Ask them to explain what benefits come with the least expensive membership, like how many locations it would give you access to, and if you can bring any guests. Find out what the monthly fee is and if there is an annual fee for the membership. Ask them if membership includes a free session with a personal trainer. So after they do that, while still listening to the recording, they come back to the main training site. And they are encouraged. So if a person is listening to the recording and it gets very distressing, they can turn it off. It can be too much for people sometimes. But if they keep it on, they go to the main training site. Then they go through mock mental health appointments. So we set up workstations. We have a testing center where they're assessed by quote unquote psychologists. And we have a quote unquote emergency department where they get a psych exam. And then we have a mock day program. And some of the things they do is like when they go to the day program, they're told, all right, everybody sit together, and we have an application for employment for you to do. And again, remember, you're doing this while you're listening to voices. During the psych exam, the psych may give you a few numbers and say, read them back to me backward. And one of the testing centers, they have to do origami, or there might be a word search. And the volunteers who are acting as psychiatrists or therapists at the day program, they are encouraged to be abrupt and condescending, because a lot of times people hear voices who receive services. They do get services that are abrupt and condescending. So it can be a bit emotionally charged for people. What's really interesting is you see some people when they go through the simulation, they want to, I don't want to use the word lash out, but they protest a bit and say, I don't want to do this, that kind of thing. But some people, you can see a sense of defeat, and it's just very surprising, just a sense of defeat. After everyone goes through those exercises, there's a group debrief where the learners sit together and reflect on their experience. And they reflect on things like, how did the simulation affect their behavior? What did they learn? What was hard? What was easier? What did your body feel like? Yeah, that is basically it. So next we're gonna watch a brief video where American broadcaster Anderson Cooper tries the simulation and gives a recap. Then we'll hear from our panel. Please note that this video may be triggering for people who hear voices, so please take care of yourselves.
How do we start?
Oh, thanks.
So I'm going to put these earphones in, and they're going to try to do a series of tests. Okay, so I'm now hearing some whispers and voices in my head, and first test is some number puzzles.
You suck, and they know it. Did you get this right?
Okay, so I did this test for 3 minutes, and I did not get a single one. It's very hard to concentrate when it's like music or something constant. It's easy, but people talking to you is very difficult. So now I'm going to be asked a series of questions by our producer Susan, and these are basically a series of questions that the person would be asked if they were being admitted to a hospital.
Can you tell me what day it is?
Yeah, it's Sunday, June, I don't know, what's the date, 7?
So I'm going to say 5 numbers, and I want you to repeat them back to me after I'm done.
Okay.
5, 23, 67, 2, 76.
5, 23, 67, something 76.
I'm going to say 5 words. You don't have to repeat them, but just listen to them. Cat, book, cigar, damage, and rain.
Make you okay.
Can you name the last 4 presidents of the United States?
Okay for you to be
Barack Obama, George Bush,
here. Right here.
Bill Clinton,
Right here.
and George Bush.
Here.
So those 5 words I said before, can you remember any of them?
Here.
Yeah. It's hard because sometimes the voices are like whispering, and sometimes they're aggressive, and sometimes they're kind of comforting. And,
Hear the truth.
but again, when people kind of talking to you all the time, it's
okay.
It's hard.
Don't worry. An hour later.
So I'm gonna try to make a boat
Well,
work on me following these instructions.
hey, it'll be okay. Near. Get near.
Shut up!
I want to talk back to the voices now, but it's really distracting.
Do not touch that stuff. You suck! What are you looking at? This is easy. You want to touch that?
I get you.
Put your head down. Keep your eyes down. Just do it. Filthy mind. Leave it alone.
It's also frustrating because they're telling me I can't do it, and so I didn't do a very good job. But it's really hard to focus when kind of people are whispering to you and talking to you.
Just come clear. Come near to me. Come near for help.
Hey, do you have yesterday's paper? Yesterday's New York Times? No? Okay, I'll skip today's. It's incredibly distracting on the street to have somebody talking in your head, and it makes you feel completely isolated from everyone else around you, and you don't want to engage in conversation with other people. You kind of find yourself wanting to engage in conversation with the voice in your head, because they're constantly being really negative and talking to you, and everything they're saying relates to things that you're actually doing. They're criticizing things you're doing. It's like it's like you have a chorus watching you and commenting on what you're doing, and you can't help it. I mean, I literally find myself wanting to kind of respond to them, kind of tell them to be quiet, and it's incredibly unpleasant. This is a very, very unpleasant experiment. It's really, it's eye-opening because it kind of really shows you what other people must be going through who deal with this on a regular basis. But also, like, I cannot wait to take this headphones off because it's really depressing. It's very negative. It makes you feel very, very negative. Yeah, it's very creepy. I want it to stop.
Eyes down. You can back up. Stand up now. I'll help you walk. Up, 20, 30, 40. Stand up now. Walk away.
You're okay.
Walk now.
Pass. Pacify. I want to pacify. All the way to make it home.
What's really interesting is how the voices, and other people who did the training had this experience too, but the voices sort of matched up with what they were doing at the
Sometimes,
time.
yeah.
Which is
By
really. But next we'll go to the highlight of this presentation, which is the panel discussion. Two of our panelists couldn't be here today, unfortunately, but we still have a lot of expertise in the people who are here. So again, we have Justin Barron, who's Director of Community Engagement Services at Community Access, and he oversees a lot of the peer programs. I just wanted to greet Michelle DeRoche, who is the Chief Program Officer. Hello, Michelle. Glad you can make it. And we have Lauren Stander, who's Assistant Director at the Gouverneur Court Supportive Housing Site. I'm going to be asking them a series of questions about their experiences. How should we do this? Should we do you want to take the mic one at a time?
I think these are on.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm not the most logical person in the world. So I'll be asking them some general experiences, and then I'll be asking questions specific to their roles. So Justin, could you tell me about your experience with the hearing voices simulation?
Yeah, so as I mentioned earlier, I've been with Community Access for 11 years, and I took this training at the very beginning. So it was a long time ago, and I have not forgotten it. So Muriel is definitely right when she was saying that this is like perhaps the most impactful aspect of the core training package. And similar to Anderson Cooper in the video, I really didn't like this experience. So maybe that's part of why it's like so permanently burned in my memory. It was really disturbing. It provoked a lot of anxiety in me. I totally wanted it to be over, like minutes into it, but I stuck it out because it was also really enlightening. But so my experience was, well, it started with a task. So I think Muriel was describing a couple of tasks that involved like going shopping and things like that, so checking out like a gym membership plan. So my task was to go to a wine store around the corner from our office and ask about the details of a variety of different wines and which wine they might recommend to go with certain food I was cooking. And I felt weird enough going into this store and like talking to the staff while I had headphones in. So I mean, even if there was nothing playing, I don't do that. I always like take headphones out when I go into a store because it seems sort of rude. So that's like a sort of an aside. But it became this like sort of multi-layered experience of self-awareness, because on the one hand, you hear these voices, and as you could tell, there's like a little bit in the background of the video. Some of the voices are positive, like "you've got this," and some of them are negative. The volume changes. There's whispers. There are shouts, and you never know what you're going to expect. It's really random. And there's something underlying, a sort of like droning sound throughout the whole thing that actually was the most unnerving for me. There was a sort of like heartbeat-like sound and like murmur, or like chatter that was indistinguishable in the background that totally threw me off. Anyways, so I was in the wine store. I think the task didn't involve buying wine, but I definitely did. I figured I would need a glass after that. So I think my colleagues were, a little surprised when I showed up with wine back at the office. So I'm listening to these voices. I'm trying to make out, like, am I making sense over this? Like, and like looking at the person and trying to understand what they're saying and like conduct like a normal conversation. But I'm worried about if I'm making sense. I'm worried if they can tell that I'm having some other experience on top of the one that's apparent to the both of us. So I was sort of worried about a lot of different things, and it definitely really impeded the basic act of going into a store and asking some questions. And then I came back to the office, and that was when we had these mock mental health appointments, and the staff that I was interacting with were acting, as Muriel was saying, as kind of curt and dismissive. And they were doing a really good job of it, so they were asking me some questions. I don't remember what the questions were anymore, but the kinds of things that you might be asked, like Anderson Cooper was asked to kind of assess if you're okay. As I was struggling to answer some questions, they were responding like, you seem like are you okay? You're not really, are you really with me? Are you paying attention? Can you pay closer attention? And which throws you off even more, but I think it really is like something that someone might experience in a hospital environment, maybe, where the staff are overworked and the person they're trying to interview is distracted by something else. So you really get a feeling of what it's like to be second-guessed and not taken seriously, and to be presumed to be somebody who is disorganized and potentially dangerous. So that was the main aspect of the training that sticks in my memory for me.
And thank you so much, Justin. Thank you, Justin. Thank you, Lauren. Lauren, how was your experience?
Yeah, so I've been with Community Access for about 9 years, almost 9 years. I started as a service coordinator, which is our kind of term for case manager, and I did core training, I guess about 8.5 years ago at this point. And really, the task itself has not stuck with me as much as the experience. I do remember, I didn't recall until you said it how odd it felt to wear headphones, and at that point I think they were kind of the kind you get on an airplane that are like really like big and odd looking, and that MP3 player was not what I had. It did look like I had like a Walkman on me, and I was like stuck in 10 years ago before that. But I needed to go to some type of restaurant and ask for catering options, for platters for X amount of people, and then ask some more questions about, do you have dairy-free options, gluten-free options, and kind of take notes and bring the notes back. And so I'm someone who, like, I'm really not a multitasker. I really can't, I'm very distractible. I can't do more than one thing at once. I've learned that about myself. So kind of, it was a struggle to concentrate. First of all, I knew this neighborhood at this point where we were doing this experiment. And I was like, where am I? Like, I kept getting lost. There's like one street to turn on, and I was finding myself lost. I'm sorry, Murial, I think I turned it down at a certain point. I was like, now I'm like remembering like, oh my gosh, I have to like just put it down a little notch. And I just could not make conversation at the same time that I was hearing input. And I felt really like just bizarre, strange. The people at the store were definitely like, what is happening here? And these are really odd questions yet. But I do like the tasks are a little bit like innocuous. Like there's no harm in going to these local stores, gyms, wine stores, whatever it might be, and asking these things, buying the wine, and then just leaving without actually ordering the catering package.
Well, I'm just thinking, but imagine if you're, I don't know, I'll give an example, a person of color, you know, walking down the street and hearing voices, and you're distracted or shouting at the voices, that could put that person at risk. Mm-hmm. You know, it's just a lot to think about.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Yeah. So I really wasn't conversing or engaging with others in an organized way. And there was also the unpredictability of the sounds. And sometimes they would also stop for a few minutes at a time and have that sort of droning sound. And not knowing when they might start again was like kind of this added layer. That was the hardest part for me, is like a little bit of dread about, excuse me, about when they might start up again. And I honestly didn't really know what to expect from the sounds. Like, I came into this with a really rudimentary understanding of hearing voices. I'm like getting emotional right now. I think what we see in the media and kind of the narratives that we often hear are, these command voices, that they're menacing, that they're coercive, that, you know, it's just stuff we see about subway incidents and, you know, the worst case scenarios. And what often isn't discussed is that there are these soothing and friendly voices. And later, like in talking with our program participants, I find out that they become friends or friendly or really get comfort from the voices that they hear. And sometimes they are like a source of guidance and support for them. And then there's like whispers and sounds and just kind of inaudible sort of, and you're trying to, like, was that a word or not? And yeah, I just think that that it all, like, kind of the stigma of all people as voice hearers as dangerous was really dispelled in that moment, because I was like, wow, there's such a variety of of things that you might get from this.
And how vulnerable the voice hearer themselves is in
Yeah.
these moments. Yeah.
Exactly. And yeah, that not knowing when the stopping and starting, you might be, and for some people I've talked with, it's like days go by, months, and then an event happens, or there might be a trigger. It might not even be something like distinguishable, and the voices are back. And the mock mental health appointments was like, that, it sends chills down my spine to this day. These were people working at our main office who I had come across at that point. I'd met them all. Very pleasant, lovely people, and they had like transformed into these like monstrous providers. So that was like, where's the like this person that I once knew? I did not perform well, and even with like sort of this this knowledge that these are safe people, I felt very dismissed. I felt like immediately sort of categorized into, oh, this is just someone who's like ill, and I want to diagnose them, I want to treat them maybe in a way that they don't even agree with. And I think one of the questions was like, are you hearing voices right now? And I was like, I didn't know if that was a trick question and if the answer should be yes, or if it should be no, not at all. And I'm just there like,
But with that sort of response from the mock providers, you're sort of inclined to lie. I mean, I felt like I shouldn't say yes, because I wanted to come across as somebody who they would accept.
Yeah, exactly. And someone more put together than I was at the moment.
Yeah.
And yeah, the whole thing was really draining. I can't really downplay how difficult it all was. And I think, you know, what Murial was saying about the debrief at the end is really essential so that you have the support of people afterwards, because it was like we were all very shaken up, and then being with this cohort that we had done training with for many weeks at that point was really helpful, and kind of brought us back down to, you know, we're all here together. But that's not the experience that people who hear voices really have to, you know, they don't have that, that it just ends.
I really appreciate your sharing that. Lauren, I wanted to ask you, how does your team support people who hear voices in the housing context?
Yeah, so in housing, I am at a SRO, a permanent supportive housing residence. We have 123 units. We have 5 support staff, caseworkers, senior service coordinator, a harm reduction specialist, and then myself and my program director, who I believe is somewhere in the back over there. So our main goals are really to support our tenants to maintain their living situation, assist them in creating and following up with their goals, acknowledge their experiences and sort of their input as equal partners in their care. And the housing setting is really unique because we are working in the same place where people live. So we want to make that environment as comfortable and welcoming as possible. And we see a lot of the same people very often, sometimes multiple times a day. And I think that kind of gives us a different perspective. Like we can see when people might be acting differently, if they're isolating, if they're just any behavior changes faster or in a more intimate way than an outside provider might see. So right now, all of our team has participated in the Hearing Voices training, and I think it's really contributed to our collective background knowledge of the experience of hearing voices. And I think it's helped us to identify when someone is actively hearing voices, and sometimes there is, like what Anderson was saying, I really feel a need to talk back to them right now. We do hear people talking back to their voices, telling them to be quiet, or just engaging with them as in conversation, and like kind of what ways we might be able to connect with them in the moment. And it depends on the rapport. It depends on the relationship between the staff and the tenant. In some ways, we do a bit of that. At times, question kind of how they might know they're hearing voices, or what is it sounding like to you right now? What's your experience right now? But there are also some people we work with that would rather not disclose if, when, how they're hearing voices, and we also respect that. That's their choice to do so. And a really big component of the housing support staff's role is that we often escort our tenants to appointments, or offer to. And this is something that could be especially valuable to someone who hears voices, because, you know, it's something we did not have an option to have that during the training. And if I had someone there, a trusted advocate, someone who I might have reviewed my wants and needs and desires before the appointment, someone there to like hold the kind of mental health providers accountable for how they're treating people, either kind of like overtly, covertly. We could kind of minimize like the ways in which their like the client's input could be disregarded, and we'll always do this kind of we'd like to not speak for people, but like it to be sort of a pre-arranged agreement in how this might go, and we could also assist with advocating for their care in the office. And usually the way we do that is we invite them to be with us when we may either make a phone call or maybe write an email, so that their input is totally communicated, and that overall just this support shows that we care about the person and not just see them as their diagnosis as they might fear some others could do. And then
I can speak.
So I'd like to thank you for your very detailed and thoughtful answer. Justin, can you speak to the way the lessons of this training inform peer support services?
Yeah, so in my role at Community Access, I work a lot with our peer-led initiatives, including a peer bridger program and our peer training program. And so like, I think, as we've touched on, the aspect of this experience that pertains the most to peer work is the development of empathy. Going through this experience, I think, forces you to grow in patience, gentleness, and compassion for people who are having similar experiences, and teaches us that it's something that's not something that we should necessarily be afraid of. And also something that we don't have to like force people to stop or to ignore. And so we tend to think about like from a medical model that like somebody who's hearing voices is a symptom of being sick. And instead, as Lauren was saying, we're sort of shifting, which is seen in the Maastricht interview and in the history of that hearing voices movement, from that you're sick and this is an aspect, a symptom of being sick, to a perspective where you're having an experience that is valid and is happening for some reason. And so by not running away and not being afraid and not like looking down on somebody and saying like, what's going on with you? This isn't real. Stop. That's fake. Instead, we can help people to spend time exploring what's going on, understand the origins, figure out what their relationship with this experience is, and tactics and strategies to address the ways that the experience impacts what they want to achieve, and not just like focus on the symptom itself. One of my colleagues who was meant to be here, Jonathan Payne, is a supported education specialist at our program called Blueprint Supported Education. It helps people who are experiencing mental health challenges to pursue their education goals, whether it's a college degree or a high school equivalency or a vocational training program. And they've worked with people who hear voices. And one of the things that we've thought about through this this training, I think he'd be talking about this if he was here, is helping people think about what impact the voices has on their experiences in a classroom. So we don't talk about like, you know, like how do you stop hearing voices, but like sometimes it's around like what direction do the voices seem to come? Do they have a direction? Is it more helpful for you to focus if you're seated in the back of a classroom so that you can see everybody, so you know that like nobody's talking at, you know, you can kind of tell everybody's looking forward. Or is it distracting to see all those people there, and do you need to sit in the front so that you don't have to think about all of the other people in like the lecture hall, for example? So we will spend time talking to people about the nature of their experience to figure out what do we need to adjust in, like, is it an accommodation? Is it like something you would approach the Office of Accommodations for? Or is it just like something simple you could do to like sort of modulate your experience by sitting in a different part of the room, asking to take a test in a separate room, so you don't have to like hear other people's chatter or sounds. These are the types of ways that we approach people in a practical manner instead of like a symptoms remediation manner.
Thank you so much, Justin. I really appreciate it. And now we'd like to leave time for the Q&A. If you have a question, please state it as a question so that we have time for everyone who has a question to participate. So if you could come to the center, and we'll talk with you.
Has anyone done this training, by the way, this experience? Oh, you have? Great.
Any questions or thoughts? Anything you needed clarification on? Yes, please come to the center. Could you state your name and your agency, please?
I'm Emily, and I'm from Goddard Riverside.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Thank you all. I was wondering if there's a way to access the simulation, either online or through an app. I don't know.
There is. You would go to patdeegan.com, and you would have to purchase a toolkit and the simulators. If you you can also contact us. You can scan this, and we might have a way of like, you know, loaning the simulators or something. We can talk about that a bit. But yes.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? So,
hi.
Yes, hi.
My name is Miriam. I'm a family housing specialist with Well Life Network.
Nice to meet you.
I definitely have like a tenant who does experience hearing voices. And in the community, you know, other tenants, both low income and supportive, they do recognize that he does hear voices. And they come to us with worries because they feel like he's a dangerous person, but because we are familiar with him, we know that he's harmless, right? He may say or do something that may be perceived as, I guess, threatening to them because they're not familiar with it. But to us, we know like that's really nothing. That's just his reaction to, you know, what he's hearing. My question is how do we make the community around him more comfortable, or recognize that, hey, you know, that his experience isn't like a threat to their like daily life.
Lauren or Justin, would you like to answer that, or would you like for me to take a stab at it? Or?
I was wondering from like your perspective in like an environment with so many tenants, like do you ever have to work with people? Sorry, I should be speaking in microphone. Do you ever have to work with people who are reacting, you know, with fear or negativity around like a neighbor who's hearing voices in the context of your building?
Yeah, this is a really great question, and it's something we do work with often, and it's difficult because we don't want to disclose health information about anyone else. And usually kind of my response is, you know, in the same way that I wouldn't really discuss with any of your neighbors about what's going on with you. You know, I'm not going to share too much about this person, but I'm wondering if there's actually been a situation where you felt that they might act on something that they were hearing, or just kind of ask more questions about what they perceive the voices as, and then kind of go further into, you know, maybe, I don't want to say poking holes, but kind of getting to the point that if you haven't felt specifically threatened, but might feel a vague threat, maybe we can talk about why that might be, and maybe, you know, if there are more kind of pointed concerns, we can bring this to some type of, you know, I would like to talk about it with my team, get sort of a pool of ideas, and maybe it would result in some type of training for all tenants or all participants about what, maybe not exactly this hearing voices simulation, but what it could mean to hear voices, and sort of how normal it can be, and how it likely is not a very dangerous sort of symptom.
Like specifically, like, you know how you guys are saying, like, you want to lash out at the like, you know, at the voices that are like antagonizing you in those moments. Like in those moments, they'll come to me and say, hey, you know, he just cussed me out, or, you know, he's pointing his finger and saying this to me in this language, and I understood. And it's like, okay, we're gonna talk to him, but like they still feel like they're like meeting a brick wall, where it's like they're telling us their concerns, but we're not able to give them any kind of, I guess, soothing, or like any kind of like answers to their problem, because it's like still ongoing. Because we can talk to him any way, but it's not like it disappears. This is just, you know, part of his life.
Yeah, I think offering first to the person who's hearing voices, if they would be open to some type of conversation, mediation, discussion with the people or person who might be bringing this concern to you, could be helpful. But yeah, we also face this, and it's case by case. It can be very difficult. I don't know if Justin, you have much more.
It's difficult,
yeah.
Case by case.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And definitely connect with us. You can scan this, connect with us, and we can do some brainstorming together and provide resources. Were there any other questions? Yes, please go ahead.
Hello. Hi. My name is Chloe. I actually am a service coordinator with Community Access. So
I know you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, we've emailed a couple
we
times.
Correspond.
Yeah. And so I guess my question is, you know, I really I haven't done the core training yet, but I do really admire the simulation, and I look forward to doing it later. But I was kind of wondering if you guys could elaborate a bit on how the way we approach hearing voices differs or maybe interacts with the medical model of mental health treatment, right? Because you have these, part of the simulation is you go to like a psychiatrist and have like a mock interaction. So do you think things like what do you think the role of like medication is, like antipsychotics and stuff like that, in treatment for schizophrenia or hearing voices, and and what role, how do you think mental health providers can contribute to treatment of hearing voices as well, or the mitigation of the voices? Yeah.
Right, that is a great question. We do stress self-determination, so people have differing ideas about taking medications. We do know that medications can really have some adverse events, like they can really have a dulling effect. They can lead to things like diabetes, and a lot of times they don't help with the voices, but sometimes people find medication helpful. Some people might find it helpful to take a little Valium, for instance, so it's really what that person wants to do. But with the medical model, psychiatrists, it really depends on the psychiatrist, because you have some psychiatrists who are person-centered, but traditionally they've seen voices as part of an illness like schizophrenia, and something to be treated, is pathologized. But with the Hearing Voices movement, there's a recognition that a lot of humans hear voices. Say, I've seen estimates 10%, 40%, et cetera. It's a very common experience, and it has different meanings to the person involved. It's a very, personal experience. It can be seen as, for instance, a spiritual experience. And the Hearing Voices movement also, stresses peer support. So those would be some things.
And yeah, I'm just gonna adding on to that briefly. That I think that when we're talking about the medical model, we're talking about something happening in the brain, like brain chemistry. So there's like a perspective that there's like normal functioning of the brain from like a physical chemical perspective, and then if someone's hearing voices, something has gone awry in the way that that process is supposed to happen. But the fact is that, I mean, there's probably truth to this, but on the other hand, like when people come to us for support, and they're experiencing voices, I think I've never met anybody who's saying like there's something going on with like neurotransmitters in my mind, that I need to get sort of reconfigured through a pharmacological process. Like people are like having some kind of experience that, like, as Muriel was saying, like it means something. And so the shift in approach is to talk to somebody, but what's actually happening for you? Tell us what's going on, because people don't tend to experience thoughts and like their own cognitive process as like some mechanical thing, and so we're not either in this sense. That's what we're aiming for and building the empathy through this experience.
Yes, we do have time for one more question. Please go ahead. Thank you.
All right, my name is Flor Marie Minotti. I'm a doctorate in nurse practitioner.
Nice to meet you.
So, thank you. And I'm with BCS, Brooklyn Community Services. I'd like to talk about a couple of things. Thank you very much for the simulation, because in my 20 years of working with the mentally ill or people that hear voices, I try to empathize, but I could never put myself in this situation. So this gave me a completely new view of what they are experiencing. As much as I try to make them feel comfortable and normalize what they are going through by going through, okay, it's mental illness, it's the same as medical illness, just like diabetes, high blood pressure, and all of that, but going through this, hearing the voices, going through the simulation, it is so much. I don't know if I could go through the simulation myself. As much as I can work with so many different things at the same time. But to do this, having somebody in my head, I don't know. But as far as the clients, when we work with them or when I work with them, I try to figure out with them what are they looking for. I don't just prescribe medication just because they're hearing voices. I want to know what are they looking. Are they looking to take medication to help them out because it's so distressing for them to hear voices? You know, the voices are so distressing and they cannot work or do anything with the voices, because I've worked with people that just started hearing voices, going to college, and that's the first time hearing voices, or working, you know, and I've worked with people that's been having chronic voices. And being a Christian as well, you hear people say, oh, I've heard, you know, I hear the voices of the Lord. You know, I'm a Christian, and yes, I would love to hear the voices of the Lord, but I can't fathom it because I can't say that I've actually heard, you know, God speaking to me. But I can't deny that the fact that they may, you know, hear God speaking to them. So I cannot start medicating everybody because they are experiencing voices. The thing is how distressing is it for them?
Yeah.
You know, if you can go to work and go to school and you can function with a little voice, who am I to say, well, you need to be medicated, you know? But if it's distressing for you, you cannot, you know, just like anybody, if you cannot function in society, then that's when I'm gonna have this conversation. What would you like me to do to help you out with this? And that's the way I approach it. And we don't really give Valium and the benzos for anxiety because of the voices. There are other medications because we are moving away from giving the patient more problems than they started with. Because giving them something like benzos will get them addicted, unfortunately. And we want to stay away from giving them more problems. They're already hearing voices. Now you get them addicted to something. So we don't want to do that. There are a lot of good medication. It was the old days, they give Valium and all this other stuff. But there are a lot of good medication that we can give a client and help them along with the voices. Thank you for giving me that platform.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And everybody, I'd like to thank you for coming to today's training. I hope that it'll inform the work that you all do. We're all in this together, providing person-centered, trauma-informed care. So let's all keep doing what we're doing, and thank you again. And thank you, Justin and Lauren. How are you feeling? Yeah, go home. Oh, I'm fine. Yeah. Yeah.